Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the fourth iteration of the pre-closed beta test. And we had the last test last weekend, and so it's kind of a fast follow-up. And this is recorded on Friday. And I have to say, not much has changed except everything, at least on paper. This week's iteration is the realistic mode, and last weekend we had the arcade mode. However, I didn't see too many differences. So what was the same? Well, we had the same map, ice fields. We had the same ships for both Russia and Germany, and we had the same planes. What were the differences? Well, we had additional fighters. For the Germans it was the Focke-Wulf 190A4, and for the Russians it was the LA-5. Furthermore, we had the differences between kind of the modes, which are kind of obvious. For the planes, when you aim at them, we had no more lead indicator, and for ships and planes alike, we didn't have any kind of range indication. So those were the big differences. Furthermore, the spam issues kind of were fixed. As far as I didn't see it, it didn't happen anymore, so that like 6 ships spawned at one and the same location. And furthermore, the waves didn't seem to be that drastic like previously. So it was kind of easier to aim. However, the ships themselves, in terms of handling and overall the damage models, didn't seem to have changed at all. And that is kind of the problem that I had with this test. Nothing seems to have changed, but this is the big difference between arcade and realistic. I mean, yeah, sure, we had no reload for torpedoes on both the planes and the ships, so in this case it was obviously more realistic. But then we had also still the insane repair times, we had still issues with how to kill a ship when it didn't work out. You still could fire those long range torpedoes, I mean that's kind of obvious. And at the same time, the waves at the start, within the convoy were not huge and you could aim relatively precisely. And then when you went to the middle of the map, between the icebergs and the ice field, so to speak, it changed. It seems like the waves got rougher, and then it was all the more difficult to bring your guns on target. The rest of the video will sound a little bit negative, but this is just pointing out all the things that I didn't like. Overall, I like the implementation and the test so far, but again, there is a lot that has to be changed. But again, it is pre-beta test, so a lot of the things will change. If there are bugs, like when you have blacked out all the 4 sections of a ship, the bow section, the rear section, the middle section, and also the bridge section, it should have been dead, but a few times it wasn't. And the same goes for actually making those sections black, especially when I drove the Russian ships. It was very easy to give a devastating blow to the enemy, to cripple him hard, to make him burn, to knock out a lot of the crew, to kill a lot of the segments and the modules. But it was very easy to get an assist because you couldn't destroy the enemy. Maybe I missed something in how to destroy a ship, but when you shoot at all the parts and you go for the hit/kill cam, where to shoot next, where there are crew members remaining and where the sections are already black and not black, and you could adjust your aim, I still couldn't kill the majority of ships. But it also changed between the matches. So I had one match where I had like 6-7 kills and 3 assists, and in the next match I had 12 assists but just 2 kills. So in this respect it is very, very frustrating indeed. One good change is the additions of the fighters, however, because the fighters would have wasted ammunitions on the ships. You really couldn't deal too much damage to the ships. I mean, you could clean the deck, which is nice, I guess, to annoy the enemy and lower their combat effectiveness. So even before your ships engage, and you still could get shot down very easily as a plane when you engage the wrong captain when he actually aims back at you. However, At the same time, those fighters were a very good counter to the bombers, and so the domination of aircraft was kind of broken. But still, you needed the bombers to deal the damage to the cargo ships. One thing that changed, however, for the German Heinkel 111 is that you had just a choice between 30 to 50 kilogram bombs or 2 torpedoes. So no more 1-ton bombs and 500 kilogram bombs or 250 kilogram bombs, whatever you could take previously. For the R4, I don't know because I have not flown it like the LA5, but you know, they performed quite similar. So, in this respect, that's practically covering all the aircraft and the ships. What I kind of disagree with is the overall meta of the ice field map itself. Like, when you played defensively and passively, you could rack up the kills, you could rack up the kill assists, you could damage the enemy without receiving too much return fire, so you lived longer, raising your profit, and therefore coming off better. So active gameplay was kind of punished like in the previous test, but all the more in this test, I guess. One thing that also has changed is how fast you actually collect the spawn points, and that was a difference between day and night. When you in the previous test you had to actually do something to get points, and you know, when you were really bad, not hitting the enemy at all, you could kind of, you know, come off with 2,000, 3,000 spawn points over the course of the entire battle. In this battle, or in this iteration of the realistic test, I continuously breached 10, 11, even 12,000 spawn points. That is ridiculous. So I think a little bit of adjustment had to go into that. But overall, it was the same meta. You had the beginner's ship, which was the S-100 for the Germans and the Bolshevik for the Russians, and then you had to gather to earn rather the spawn points, which went then on really drastically. Again, I didn't enjoy the S-100 and the Bolshevik too much, but on the other hand, the bigger ships were enjoyable. However, sometimes, as I mentioned, the damage model or how the damage output works or is calculated lets you down, and that is kind of the frustration that I had with this test and the previous test. Like, you could pump immense amounts of lead and high explosive into the enemy, trying to knock out the steering, the engine, make it burn, damage all the sections, make him black, work with the kill and hit cam, and he still could return fire with a few shots and cripple you severely, set you on fire, and you had immense long reloads while you also were slower in that. So that again is in conjunction with the passive playstyle. Furthermore, you know, just launching those long range torpedoes, I like the idea, but on the other hand, that the cargo ships were so easy to lead, in, you know, my opinion. Like, you took a part or a gap where then you could say, well, I could hit those guys overlapping. You just could them launch at the beginning, then your torpedo tubes were empty, at least in theory, because you didn't reload them. In the case of the MZ1, you still could get ammo rack when you had empty torpedo tubes, and as sturdy as the MZ is and as packed with firepower as it is, even with a 37mm cannon with several hits into the torpedo tubes, which were surprisingly easy to hit, you just could ammo rack the enemy. And you just couldn't do this with other ships. You couldn't do this with the S-100, the Bolshevik, or the other Russian big ship, despite, you know, hitting their depth charges, their torpedoes, and so on. And that is kind of what has to change. So in this respect, again, the Germans had kind of the more or too realistic damage model, while again the Russians were better off in this respect. However, they were easier to cripple. One thing that really struck my mind is how difficult it is to take out the gunners, even with the big 88mm high explosive shells, when you directly hit the gun shield. but you could destroy entire sections with a double volley. So I think in this respect I still have to learn a lot. In this respect, I also think that's it for today for the 4th ship test iteration, the pre-beta test. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this iteration, if you had fun, if you learned something, what do you think about the future of it. Just let me know in the comment section. I read them all, and I think we will see each other on the waves of War Thunder.